And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. And boy, suddenly it became summer out there. Our shot from the Capitol has changed. Anyhow, it's Friday, so our first hour, Senator Bernie Sanders. I think of him as America's senator. The good people of Vermont know him as theirs. Live over at the Senate studio, Senator Sanders. Yep. Hey.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Thank you for joining us. And we will be taking calls for Bernie right after the first break. Senator Sanders, what's wild news coming out of the Senate?
There is a lot that is going on. As you mentioned, the budget issue is front and center. The House voted to support it. It'll be coming to the Senate, I believe, next week. And I haven't yet, to be honest with you, decided how I'm going to vote on this thing. Clearly, I think no one denies that this budget is an extremely modest effort. It does not in any way, shape, or form address the major crises facing our country. There is no money going in there for job creation or rebuilding our infrastructure or moving aggressively toward energy efficiency. We have not in this budget asked the wealthiest people, largest corporations in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes at a time when we spend on defense almost as much as the rest of the world combined. We have not made the kind of cuts in defense spending that I think would be appropriate. On the other hand, and let me be very clear about this, what I am very proud of is that I and many other people have been working for a number of years against very, very powerful special interests who have wanted to cut Social Security. They've wanted to cut Medicare. They've wanted to cut Medicaid. There are no cuts in this budget in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and that is not insignificant. We have continued to fight off these attempts, and that's a good thing. One of the areas that is perhaps most disappointing is that we continue to have in this country not only very high unemployment. Unemployment, as I point out every week, is not really 7%. It's much higher than that if you include those people who have given up looking for work and those people who are working part-time. It's over 13%. Youth unemployment, close to 20%. Long-term unemployment in this country is a very, very serious problem. It's at a record-breaking level. And this budget does not include a provision to extend long-term unemployment. And that means that at the end of this year, about 1.3 million people will lose their long-term unemployment and benefits. And that is not only very bad for families who are suffering with long-term unemployment, but it's bad for the economy because that is money that these folks will not be spending. It will result in the loss of about 200,000 jobs. So it's a mean-spirited and bad idea not to extend these benefits. Now, the problem that Patty Murray has had, and Patty is the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, is she's negotiating with folks who want to, as I mentioned earlier, cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut education, cut nutrition programs, give more tax breaks to billionaires, and maintain loopholes for large multinational corporations who in some cases pay nothing in federal income taxes. So she was in a very, very difficult position. But I've got to, over the weekend be thinking about what the best vote is on that. So that's one issue that is out there. I'm chairman of the Veterans Committee. One of the issues that the committee has been dealing with, and veterans throughout this country have been dealing with, is the fact that we have done VA has a very large backlog in terms of benefits claims. I'm happy to say that in recent months they have made some significant progress in closing that backlog. They're in the process of converting their system from paper to digital, and they are now doing a much better job than they previously did. They still have a long way to go, but they are making some good progress. This week I also, in the midst of all of the discussion about the Affordable Care Act, I reintroduced a single-payer legislation which would provide health care to every man, woman, and child in this country as a right through state-administered single-payer program. And if we do that, you will save per capita substantial sums of money. As I hope everybody knows, our very dysfunctional and complicated and wasteful healthcare system now spends almost twice as much per person on healthcare as do the people of any other country. It has been calculated that if, as a nation, we spent the same amount per person as do people in other countries, Tom, we would be saving over somewhere around $900 billion every single year.
Wow, so that's essentially the subsidy that we're giving to these for-profit corporations.
Exactly. So what you have is a system based on profit. The insurance companies make a whole lot of money. And not only do they make a whole lot of money, they distort healthcare priorities. We have a crying need, a desperate need for more primary healthcare all over this country. And if you did that, you had the doctors, you had the nurses, you had the clinics, you would actually save money by keeping people out of emergency rooms where Medicaid pays 10 times more per visit than they would if somebody went to a community health center, for example. We do nowhere near as good a job in disease prevention as we should. We have too many specialists in areas that we don't need them, et cetera, et cetera. So we have and among many other concerns in terms of our healthcare system, we have the drug companies in this country charge our people by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. They resist strenuously the efforts to go from brand name to generic, where the prices can be substantially lower for the consumer. So once you have a system geared toward profit, it should not be surprising that we spend so much more per capita, that our healthcare outcomes in terms of life expectancy, infant mortality, and many other problems are worse than in many other countries. Interestingly enough, when many of my colleagues get on the floor of the Senate and they say, we have the best healthcare system in the world, well, you know what? There's a poll that came out that was done recently by the Commonwealth Fund. And they polled the people in 11 countries getting their views on how they felt about the healthcare system, just without going into all of the responses. In the United Kingdom, 63%, that's a socialized healthcare system by and large, 63% of the people in the UK thought that their system worked well and needed only minor changes. In the United States, we are at the bottom of 11 countries polled. We were at 25% thought our system worked well, only minor changes. In terms of having the need to completely rebuild the system, that it was so bad it had to be completely rebuilt. In the UK, 4%. In this country, 27%. Other countries that do have much more popular healthcare systems, Switzerland, Netherlands, Austria, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Germany, Canada, and France. So we are at the bottom of the list in terms of how people feel about their healthcare system, and yet we spend, for that privilege of being at the bottom of the list, almost twice as much per capita. And that's why I've introduced a single-payer system, single-payer piece of legislation. And the point there is very simple. Number one, in my view, healthcare is a right of all people. And number two, if you're going to guarantee healthcare to all of our people as a right, you need a cost-effective system, and a single-payer approach is the way to go. So essentially, it would be improving and expanding Medicare, improving and expanding the CHIP program, Children's Health Insurance Program, both of which are popular programs that work pretty well and fairly cost-effectively.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. He will be answering your questions right after this quick break on Brunch with Bernie here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
You can also drop into our live chat room over at thomhartmann.com. And you can subscribe to Bernie's newsletter, the Bernie Buzz, over at sanders.senate.gov. Welcome back. Laura in Sebring, Florida, watching Free Speech TV on the DirecTV satellite system. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Senator. How are you today?
I am great.
Good. I had a question about. I saw Boehner come out and say that the Heritage Foundation, Freedom Works, etc. Well, he didn't say that, but he said these special interest groups didn't even know what was in the budget agreement, but they had commented on it already. Why are these people running our country, and why can't we get our country back from them?
Well, Laura, that is a very, very good question, and it gets down to campaign finance. It gets down to this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision of several years ago. The simple reality is that big money interest and billionaires have huge influence of what happens in the United States Congress and what does not happen in the United States Congress. To a very large degree, especially in the House, they determine the agenda. And I hope that everybody really understands, and I think many people do not, Tom and Laura, understand what their agenda is. If you look at what the Koch brothers want, if you look at some of these right-wing think tanks, some of which are funded by the Koch brothers or other billionaire-type organizations, this is what they want. And I think people think, well, Bernie, you're exaggerating. I am not exaggerating. They want to end Social Security. They do not believe that the government should play a significant role in protecting the needs of the American people. They want to move us toward an oligarchic form of society where big corporations and the wealthy have virtually all of the economic and political power. That's their agenda. What does that mean? It means you eliminate Social Security, because Social Security is a very effective and successful government program which makes sure that when you get old or when you're disabled or if you're a widow and you have kids, that you're going to get some protection and have some security in your life. They want to end Medicare, because Medicare is a government program that works pretty well in providing insurance to seniors. They don't want the government involved in that. They want to make massive cuts in Medicaid or in Medicaid. Some of them want to privatize the Veterans Administration, which, by the way, provides pretty good quality health care to about 6.2 million veterans throughout this country. They want to eliminate the Environmental Protection Agency because they think it's just fine for companies to dump their crap into our rivers, our lakes, into our air without any government restrictions. They think it's just terrible. Many of these guys want to eliminate the concept of the minimum wage. And right now, one of the issues, and I'll talk about this more later, that's coming up is, in fact, the need to raise the minimum wage. We're going to have a heck of a fight on our hands. I don't know that we can get 60 votes, but certainly we have to do it. They say the $7.25 minimum wage today, which to my mind is a starvation wage, they think it is just too high. And if you're in a high unemployment area and somebody wants to pay you $3 an hour, there is no problem. So, Laura, my point is these guys have a right-wing extremist agenda. A family like the Koch brothers are worth over $70 billion. They are pouring hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the political process in Washington, at state capitals, all over this country. They are enormously powerful.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of your questions for Bernie right after this. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and it's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders answering your questions. Paul, watching on live stream in Olympia, Washington. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My question is regards how the Republicans won the House of Representatives by redistricting and gerrymandering. And I would like help understanding what prohibits the Justice Department or organizations or individuals from taking on legal action against redistricting and gerrymandering.
Paul, nothing prohibits the Department of Justice from doing that, and I think in the past they have. But as you know, redistricting is done at the statewide level. And frankly, there has always been a certain amount of gerrymandering. The Republicans didn't invent that concept. Democrats have done it too. What Republicans have done, as they often do, is just take it to a whole new level. Where the Department of Justice can get involved, and have gotten involved, is if there is an intentional effort to deny people of color their constitutional rights in terms of representation. If gerrymandering manipulates districts to deny minorities their constitutional rights, that is an opportunity for the Department of Justice to intervene. So that's kind of where we are. You have a situation now where in the last elections, interestingly, Democrats got, I can't remember, was it, Tom, 1 million more votes than the Republicans?
I think it was like 1.4 million. It was well over 1 million.
So more people voted for Democratic candidates to the U.S. House than voted for Republican candidates, but Republicans have the majority, and a lot of that has to do with gerrymandering. So it's an issue, though, that has also got to be fought. It's not just the Department of Justice. It's going to have to be fought state by state to see that there are fair districts.
Yeah. Jeff, in Peoria, Illinois, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon. I'm a pipe fitter, a union pipe fitter, and for the first time in my 13-year career, I'm looking at an extended layoff period this winter. So I'm concerned about the unemployment extension, and if the budget does make it through the Senate, is there any hope for the extension on long-term unemployment?
Jeff, thanks very much for the question. What I have been concerned about, the answer is yes, there is hope. And my understanding is that the legislation will come up fairly soon, maybe in early January. But what I worry about is that we have a Republican Party that is certainly not sympathetic to working people and not sympathetic to the unemployed. And it is going to be a very, very tough political struggle, not impossible, but a tough political struggle to get that passed. And the reason I am upset that it's not in the budget is when you're in the budget, it gives you leverage. In other words, the Republicans in the House, for a variety of reasons, primarily, I think, because politically they didn't want to shut down the government. Again, that was a disaster for them politically. They felt they had to pass it. I think there is a good chance they would have passed it if there was an extension, if not a year, at least 3 months of extended unemployment. So we've lost that leverage, and that concerns me. But on the other hand, I think extending unemployment is popular. We have high unemployment in many parts of this country. So, you know, we're gonna absolutely mount that fight, and I hope that we can win it.
Dana in New York City, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon, Tom.
Hello, Dana.
Hello.
Yeah, you're on the air.
My question is a question about this thing with the canceled policies in the ACA. Was this loophole that allowed the insurance companies to cancel these policies without just amending them or raising the prices? Was it an accidental oversight in the composition of the bill, or was this a deliberate plug-in compromise that because it's resulting in another backdoor subsidy to the private insurance companies to subsidize these junk policies?
Well, I think the intention was, that, which I think makes sense, is to do away with policies that people honestly don't even know how bad they are, which have huge deductibles, which pay out, in some cases, only a few $1,000s in benefits, which will last you about 12 minutes if you ever enter a hospital. So the feeling was, I think what Obama was thinking is, these are such absurd policies. They're so essentially useless. They're fraudulent in a way, because people have expectations. Hey, I have health insurance. They don't know that it covers only $2,000 worth of care. So I think that was the expectation. And I think also in that particular area of individual policies, they change all of the time, and people come in and come out of them. So I don't know. I can't tell you what was intentional or not, but I think the goal is certainly to do away with junk policies which give people the misunderstanding that they have real coverage.
Okay. Bernie, we have just about a little over a minute before the next break.
Let me touch on another issue, which is kind of why I'm here on a Friday afternoon and usually not. And that is this week, as many listeners know, a few weeks ago, the Democrats, with my very strong support, changed the rules in terms of how we can approve presidential nominations to the executive branch and to the judiciary. What we have seen is unprecedented Republican obstructionism. And finally, we changed the rules so that you don't need 60 votes to get these things passed, but you only need a majority. And the result of that is that we have gone very rapidly through many nominations to circuit courts, very importantly to the D.C. Court of Appeals, which is the second most important court in the country, and a number of other positions where the president had made nominations, but they were just being delayed by the Republicans. I think that this is a good step forward. My own view is that we've got to go even further.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, taking your calls. Senator Sanders taking your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be back with more of Senator Sanders right after this. Be sure to check out his website at sanders.senate.gov. It's a great news site and resource, and you can sign up for the Bernie Buzz.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
That's sanders.senate.gov. Be sure and check it out. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Program, the True People's Media. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders live from the Senate with us today. And Bernie, back to the calls.
Let's do it.
Okay. Ken in Great Falls, Montana, watching Free Speech TV on the DirecTV satellite system. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. It really bothers me that over in the Bakken in North Dakota, they're flaring over $100 million worth of natural gas every month. That's enough to heat about 500,000 homes. Now, the sad part is there's regulations, but they pretty much have the ability to flare this gas for at least a year before the regulations even kick in. Would you consider putting a tax on this flaring, this total waste of our children's future? I mean, I'd rather go to green stuff, but we're at least going to have that natural gas for a transitional fuel. And the fact that they're wasting this huge amount just so they can get at the oil is an absurd thing that our country's doing.
Okay, Ken, thanks very much. I have to tell you, I did not know as much as what you had told me, but that is an area that we should explore, and I think you make a very good point.
Ashes in Palatine, Illinois. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Thanks for listening to WCPT.
All right, thanks for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Sanders, my question is, do you think the healthcare industry is hurt by the for-profit that it's in? Because I see a lot of doctors and insurance companies that they're just in it for the money, and that because they're in it for the money, that's going to produce a different outcome for their patients and the customers.
Well, yes. I mean, I think when you have a for-profit healthcare system, the result is that you have a complicated system. You have a system not designed to provide quality care to all people in a cost-effective way, but a system that will make money, as much money as possible, for insurance companies, drug companies, certain kinds of doctors, medical equipment suppliers, and all of those who can make profits out of the healthcare system. And it really does distort a whole lot of what happens within healthcare. One of the areas, as I mentioned earlier, that I am deeply concerned on, and chairman of the subcommittee that deals with this, is we don't have enough primary health care doctors. We don't have enough dentists. We don't have enough nurses. But on the other hand, in certain areas, we have too many specialists. We charge our people much too much for prescription drugs. So you have a system which is not designed to run cost effectively, to provide quality care, but to make money. And when you have that, you end up with results that we have, spending almost twice as much per person on health care as any other nation, all of whom, any other major nation, all of whom have, in one way or another, national health care systems. They differ, but that's what they all have. They're not dominated by private insurance companies.
Lynn in Waleka, Florida. Am I saying that right, Lynn, watching us on TV?
Walaka, Florida,
Walaka,
Free Speech TV, yes. Thank you. My question has to do with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and from what I've been reading, it sounds like there's everything in it for a corporation and absolute devastation to our labor market and the regulations that we have worked so hard to get to make people safe. And I don't understand our president's desire to fast-track something that sounds like it's going to damage our country drastically. Thank you.
Well, Lynn, I think your very good question gets back to a question that was asked earlier, maybe at the very beginning of the show by Laura from Florida, and that is about money in politics. And I am sorry to have to tell you that on issues of trade, there really has not been a whole lot of difference between Democrats and Republicans, whether it's Obama or George W. Bush or Clinton or George Herbert Walker Bush or Reagan. These are guys who are supporting the corporate model of unfettered free trade, which to my mind has been a disaster for the middle class and working people of this country, forcing us to compete against countries where people are making 50 cents an hour or $1 an hour. So I have very strong concerns about the TPP, not only in terms of what it does to American workers and the loss of manufacturing jobs, but also, among other things, prescription drugs and what it does to developing countries. We pay the highest prices in the world for brand name drugs. And what other countries try to do is get generic drugs on the market quicker. What the pharmaceutical industry wants to do is prevent that from happening. And they are working hard to force poor countries around the world to pay far more for prescription drugs than is currently the case. And I think that that is enshrined in the TPP agreement. So this is, from what I can see, a corporate written document. It will not be good for working people in this country or for low-income people in other countries around the world.
Nick in Chicago, listen on WCPT. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Nick?
Hello, it's Nick and Nick.
Hey, yeah, you're on the air.
I didn't hear you call my name, Tom. Sorry.
My apologies.
Senator Sanders, the question is, if we have issue with Social Security because money was borrowed, and jobs are going overseas, and the only way really to bolster Social Security is to have working Americans putting back into the system, why can't there be a tariff in order to on imported goods from other countries, even if those goods are or the corporation is here in the U.S.? Why can't a tariff be put on that so we can start strictly for Social Security?
Okay. Nick, I think you are kind of bringing together issues which kind of should be dealt with separately or in a slightly different way than you are proposing. In terms of the issue of Social Security, let me be very clear, as I have been week after week on this show. Social Security, despite what you may see on Fox television, is not going broke. Yes, of course, what Social Security does is invest their very substantial surplus of $2.7 trillion in Treasury bonds in order to get an interest payment. And interest provides a substantial amount of money into the Social Security trust fund. That's what they do, and that's what they should do. But Social Security can pay out every benefit owed to every eligible American for the next 20 years. The way we make it stronger for 50 to 75 years is lift the cap on taxable income so we end the absurdity of somebody who's making $1 million a year contributing the same amount into the Social Security Trust Fund as somebody who's making $113,000. That's how you deal with Social Security. I think the issue of tariffs is a slightly different issue. And that is an issue that says, why is it that the middle class of America is disappearing? Why is it that in the last 10 years we have probably lost over 50,000 factories in this country and millions of decent-paying manufacturing jobs? Why is it that the new manufacturing jobs being created in America, and there are some, are paying in some cases 50% less than what older manufacturing jobs used to pay? And that has a lot to do with unfettered free trade. And if you allow companies to go to China or to Vietnam to produce a product and to pay people 25 or 50 cents an hour and then bring that product back into this country without any tariff at all, it should not surprise you that that will drive American companies out of business who are paying people a living wage in this country. So I think you got two separate issues. Number one, we have got to protect Social Security. We've got to make sure it's solvent for the next 50 to 75 years. And I indicated the way I think we should do that. In terms of protecting our jobs, I do think we need to radically change our trade policies and, among other things, establish tariffs.
Dan in Tell City, Indiana. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Bernie. This Dan. I would like to implore you to why don't they do something about the number of lobbyists that corporations can to limit them to say one instead of like 5?
Well, Don, the answer for that is that the big money interests who already control the Congress want to have even more influence. And what you're suggesting, if we limited the number of lobbyists significantly, it would diminish their power. Right now, the average working person doesn't have a paid lobbyist fighting for his or her needs. But lobbyists, if you're a multinational corporation, you may be spending zillions of dollars on lobbyists. You're spending a whole lot of money on campaign contributions. You're setting up all kinds of think tanks to influence public policy. So the big money interests have a huge impact on what goes on in Washington, D.C., and they are not of a mind to limit that. Do I think we should limit the number of lobbyists? I certainly do. I think it's a good idea. Do I believe we should move to public funding of elections so that, you know, people like Sheldon Adelson of the Koch brothers can't spend hundreds of millions of dollars? Yes, I do. But we are in a minority in that point of view in the U.S. Senate and certainly in the House of Representatives.
And the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. We'll be back with more Brunch with Bernie right after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov. You can sign up for his newsletter, The Bernie Buzz, and it's a constantly changing news resource. Things happen, it's there. Welcome back. And Steve, watching Free Speech TV on the DirecTV satellite system. You're in Simi Valley, California. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, hi, Senator Sanders. First, I want to thank you and the other Democrats for hanging tough on these all-nighters that the Republicans are pulling to get President Obama's nominees through, so I do appreciate that. The question I had for you is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but earlier Tom had said for the budget to pass, they would need a cloture of 60 votes. I always thought that on the budget, all you needed was 51 votes to get cloture. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. Thank you very much.
Yes, on this issue, you are wrong, Steve. We do need 60 votes for cloture. And what has happened, and I don't usually go into Senate process, but let me spend a minute on that because Steve asked an important question. What Reid did appropriately, I think it was long overdue, was say to the Republicans, you cannot continue to obstruct, and deny the President of the United States his constitutional right to bring people on board or to appoint people to the judiciary. That is what they did. And they did it by objecting, requiring 60 votes. We don't have the 60 votes, and they were able to substantially slow up the process. So that was changed in terms of the presidential nominations. What has not been changed is legislative issues. And here you have a very difficult situation. Historically, for most important pieces of legislation, majority won. You got 51 votes, you won. But since President Obama has been in office, virtually every significant piece of legislation has been filibustered by the Republicans, has been objected to by the Republicans, and requires 60 votes. I myself think that the Democrats in the Senate should take a hard look at that and move forward, in fact, to change that rule as well. Historically, again, it took a majority. Now it takes 60 votes. And that means that it is very, very difficult for the Senate to do the work that the American people want us to do. Just give you two examples. Earlier in the show, we heard about a pipe fitter who's worried about not being able to get the unemployment benefits that he may need. I think most Americans would like us to extend unemployment benefits. I am not sure. I hope we can get 60 votes. Not sure that we can. In terms of the minimum wage, poll after poll shows overwhelming majority of the American people understand that $7.25 is not a wage that people should be forced to live on, that we need to substantially raise the minimum wage to at least $10.10 an hour. That bill is going to come up probably within the next month. I am quite confident that we're going to have a majority of senators supporting that. I am not confident at this point that we will necessarily have the 60 votes that we need to proceed. What do? Do you simply throw up your hands and say, gee, we can't do what the American people want us to do? Or do you say, I'm sorry, if you're going to keep objecting and filibustering, maybe we need to change the law on that. But in this case, we will need, at this time, 60 votes.
10 minutes before the hour, we'll be right back with more of Senator Bernie Sanders on our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us, and Ed in Klamath Falls, Oregon. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good day, Senator Sanders.
Hey, Ed. How are you?
I noticed that you folks from the House and the Senate have decided to balance the budget based on the more on the backs of the people that are collecting federal pensions. I have to ask you, how much have you reduced the federal pensions for the House and the Senate? Your pension in this little budget deal. And next time the Republicans want to talk about means testing, why don't we means test everything? Why don't we means test the oil depletion allowance? If you're a super rich corporation, you don't need the oil depletion allowance.
Well, Ed, you raise a good question. In terms of congressional pensions, they were substantially changed. I can't tell you exactly, about, I'm guessing, 20, 22 years ago. So they were very, very high. They are good now. But not radically inconsistent with the private sector. But you make a good point in terms of federal pensions. One of the concerns that I have when I talked about not being yet decided how I'm going to vote on this bill is the continued attack on federal employees. As I indicated earlier, the Republicans want to cut many, many significant federal programs. And when you do that, you're attacking the federal employees who administer those programs. And that's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. It is the Postal Service that they want to significantly downsize. And what has happened in terms of federal employees is that for the previous 3 years, Tom, they got a 0% increase in wages. Now they've gotten a 1% increase in wages, but what this agreement says, and this is one of the very negative aspects of it, is that for new new federal employees, they're going to have to pay 1.2% more out of their incomes for pensions. So the attack continues. Ed is absolutely right. There is a continued attack against federal employees.
Okay. Jennifer in Chicago, listening on WCPT. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Did you say Jennifer in Chicago?
I did. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to start talking louder here.
No, there was anyway, static. But yes, this is Jennifer, and Senator Sanders, I agree with you about Social Security and raising the cap. My question is two parts. First of all, are you suggesting that we raise the cap or do away with the cap entirely? And secondly, would they ever consider raising the cap or doing away with the cap but lowering the rate so that it is easier on working class people and not as undesirable to the rich people?
That's a very good question, Jennifer. Here's the proposal that I have introduced. There are different proposals out there in terms of the cap. What I have done for, fairly obvious reasons is I have introduced legislation which has a number of co-sponsors, which is exactly the concept that Barack Obama introduced when he ran for president the first time. And what that does is it eliminates the cap, but it doesn't start at $113,000. It would start at $250,000 a year. So people who earn less than $250,000 would not have to pay more, but the cap would go up at $251,000. That is exactly what President Obama campaigned on the first time he ran for office. Unfortunately, he has since changed his view. Now, what Jennifer is also saying is that right now, working people are paying a pretty stiff 6.2%. Their employers pay 6.2%. And Jennifer is asking, is there a way that we can create a more progressive approach towards Social Security taxes? Perhaps lower it for lower income people. That is a very, very good idea and something worth looking at.
Gary in Sacramento, California. Gary, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Oh, hi, guys. This is awesome. My question is this. I understand globalization, especially from a corporation's perspective. However, back in the days when we had tariffs and taxes and whatever else we had to incentivize the competition coming in from abroad to goods to America, why can't we go back to something like that and even attach the guys that are American corporations?
Well, Gary, that's a very good question. And that is, when we talk about the need to reform our trade policies, that is exactly what we are talking about. For the last many decades, corporate America has, in a variety of ways, been at war against working families in this country. They have worked aggressively to break unions. They have worked aggressively for aggressive taxes and against a progressive tax system, which asks the wealthy and large corporations to start paying their fair share. But also, as part of their attack against working families, has been this globalization and unfettered free trade. And what unfettered free trade is about is saying, American worker, you're making $15 an hour or $18 an hour. Guess what? You are now going to have to compete against people in China, in Vietnam, all over the country who make 50 cents an hour or $1 an hour. And the way we can compete is, number one, through trade. We will bring products into this country, drive your employer out of business, and we will reach a situation where your wages, your company is going to have to lower wages in order to be competitive. There was an instance last year where I believe it was General Electric expanded a manufacturing facility in Louisville, Kentucky. And when asked why they were expanding the facility, the fellow from GE said, well, in America now, wages are becoming more competitive with the international community. In other words, because wages have gone down, we can now rebuild in America, and that becomes attractive to us. Well, to my mind, that is a very, very sad state of affairs. That is exactly what the race to the bottom is about. And I'm afraid that corporate America has succeeded to a large degree in that effort.
Senator Sanders, thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.